Hey everybody! In today's video, I'm going to show you a quick and easy faux batik. Batik is absolutely one of my favorite looks, whether it's fabric or paper. And we are going to create this batik with a crayon. Now this is my challenge for the Dare to Get Dirty event at Split Coast Stampers. And I would love for y'all to come over and play in all 43 challenges this year. This is my first challenge, and you can do this challenge with a stencil like I'm doing here. I just have my cardstock on top of a stencil, and I'm taking the side of a white crayon and rubbing really firmly against the cardstock on top of the stencil to pick up the texture that the stencil is providing. Now, in my challenge, I also listed like a texture plate or an embossing folder. Anything with texture underneath your cardstock will work here. I like to do this on my sticky mat so things aren't moving. I find that that works great for this kind of thing where you want your stencil to stay in the same place. And of course you can't see anything with the white crayon, but it will show up when we apply ink. Now the key to this technique is you want your cardstock that you are using to have a lightweight. That's how a stencil like this with all these intricate little details can really show up on your project, is if you have a lighter weight cardstock, like an 80-pound cardstock versus a 100-pound, etc. You could also do this on copy paper or any lightweight paper. Now I am taking my holy trinity of water reactive Hero Hues inks to this. And you can see I got a little ink on the side of that card. No big deal, you're not even going to notice. And I'm going to apply these with the Hero Arts blending brushes. And of course, I have my beloved ink stands to hold my ink pads while I blend, so that blending is really a one-handed process, which I love. Now, I'm adding the ink just kind of randomly all around this, and you'll see how much detail you get from that intricate stencil. Those little tiny points that I pointed out show up beautifully on this cardstock. You can see them, the little kind of curly cues at the end of each little star shape. So no matter how intricate your stencil, please try this technique. It's so much fun. The ink is sitting up on top of that crayon right now, and we're going to brighten that up a little bit at the end, but you can see those details that I'm talking about, the teeny tiny bits of plastic stencil that show up just perfectly. It's a little distressed and it has the look of batik, but you're not losing detail at all. It's just a really fun, distressed look that I love. Now you could also try this with other kinds of crayons. If you wanted to try a different color, if you wanted to try black, you can try black. The sky is the limit. Now this year for the fan club challenge, which is called Dare to Get Dirty, we have tons and tons of prizes to give away, but this is our 15th anniversary. And so for the first time ever, we are allowing non-fan club members to see the challenges so that you can sort of see what you're missing. So please do come play with us. It's a lot of fun. We do have some social media prizes as well if you want to share your cards that you make with the challenges in social media. Now, a microfiber cloth removes the ink from the top of the crayon, and you can see that bright white pop out. This is what I consider to be an essential step. And I'm also just adding some little droplets of water. Since this is water reactive ink, I love to add that little touch as well. Now I'm just going to dry the little spots of water before we move on. I have a white card base. I buy these pre-cut and folded. I have a link in the supply list. And then sometimes I like to put a little black border around a very, very colorful background like this. I find that that is very sharp and professional looking. And in this particular case, it's going to coordinate with what I'm doing for the sentiment, which is these awesome word dies from Hero Arts. So I will cut these apart. This is actually the first time I've used these dies. I have another video coming up for gel press where I have the peace version of these where it says peace, joy, love. And they just have a whole series of these word dies, and they're great for moments like these where you've worked really hard on your background and you just want a simple die. I will also tell you that since you are creating this pattern in crayon, and that is wax, that is going to resist ink on top of it. So if you wanted to stamp a sentiment, let's say, you would want to do that before applying the crayon to your cardstock. Otherwise, your ink is just going to wipe off of the wax. So I'm using some pitch black cardstock with my little Hero Arts compact cutter. This is my favorite black cardstock. And for some reason, I decided to die cut these separately. They both fit on the plate, and I come to my senses later on, but for some reason I put these through twice, and I don't know why. So what I'm creating with the black dies is the drop shadow, basically, for my sentiment. I felt like just black was a bit heavy on this sort of kind of bright, even pastel-y on that one sample background. And so I wanted to have a white sentiment with a black drop shadow. So see here, I came to my senses and I cut them out at the same time. Just, you lose your mind sometimes. I don't know what that's about. Now, if you have little die release holes that create little bumps on your die cuts, just use a Teflon bone folder to go over those, and it will remove any little creases that it got going through the die cutting machine or those little release hole bumps. So I like to do that with my sentiments. You can see on the left that little line that I'm going to go over and make disappear. It's easy, it just takes a second, but I think it's one of those finishing details that's really worth it. So now I have some glue, and for this particular technique, I recommend glue. Well, I always recommend glue because I'm a glue person. But if I'm not using a double-sided adhesive sheet for a specialty application, I really prefer glue because it does give me a little bit of time to adjust what I'm doing, and I tend not to get things straight the first time. But especially when you're layering die cuts like this, you really need that extra wiggle room. For one thing, die cut words can be flexible. They can bend a little bit because they tend to be a little bit long and thin. So you'll want to make sure that you get them straight when you're putting them together, and then have a second just to scoot them over to the right so your drop shadow remains to the left. So that's what that looks like. And I'll finish these very simply just by adding those drop shadowed sentiments. Now, when I do this on my glass mat, I like to line up my card on the grid on my glass mat and try to align the bottom of the die cut using the horizontal lines on either side of the grid. It's my last chance for getting things straight, which I'm just not very good at. But it does help me to have that grid and be able to see it when I am adding something that I need to be somewhat straight. I like how thick these are once you've layered two little pieces up, and I just pop my magnets on there to let the glue dry for a second. So here are the finished cards. Come on over to my blog for the challenge details, the prizes, and more, and I hope you play along with us this year. Thanks so much for watching.